Let's do it. Alrighty, here we go. My name is Marty Fox from WHITEFOX. Now, here's the deal.
Welcome back to another episode of WTF. My name is Shira Taft. I'm joined, of course, with the Fox by Marty Fox. And this should be a fun one. We've got a guy on who I feel like isn't afraid to speak his mind. He's going to tell us the truth about his life and what he's up to. And we might get a few tidbits as well about, what it's like to sell property in both the commercial, I don't know about resi space, but certainly commercial space. But
I'll make something up.
Make something up if you need to. So I want to welcome Oscar Ledlin, a man who, he started a little bit of a boxing background, believe it or not. He's been in the ring a few times. His face is still pretty though, that's nice. Sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of property, has a company now alongside his father doing great things in the commercial real estate space. He's a new father himself, just recently got married. You've done it all, Oscar. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate you having me on.
It's going to be an interesting one, mate. I feel like this guy, I know you guys connected over social media, and that would probably make up a bit of this podcast talking about social media in the space. But what do you remember about seeing this guy?
Well, I just remember that, this is just an example of how powerful social media can be, because when would have we really ever crossed paths, in any other format, industrial, developer, commercial, I'm in residential, different areas, but it was what you were putting out online, which I had a lot of people in my network sent to me and be like, mate, this guy's really similar to you. He just puts out what he's thinking very unapologetically, and it was resonating with people that were following you. And I started following you and you started following me, and I saw a lot of similarities in just how we communicated, things that we were up to. Like, why not share? And that's where, Instagram friendship was born. And this is only, the second time that we've met? Literally. But it's bizarre because I feel so familiar with Oscar and following his life online that's what I love about social media, is that you can create these friendships or these admirations for people and feel comfortable instantly. So
I bumped into Bonnie around the corner.
It was her birthday yesterday.
And I nearly was like, happy birthday. And I was like, don't be weird.
She doesn't know you.
Yeah, you're a stranger.
But it's funny. So, that's my phone dropping. But, people don't understand social media and they question themselves so much. And when people say to me, what's it like, with your socials, I actually don't overthink it. And I think that you're quite similar, that you just do it. What was your whole game plan, from starting doing what you're doing and putting as much out there as possible?
I think I was just lucky enough early on to realise that personal branding was going to become more powerful as the world become more connected and just more available to everyday people. You didn't have to be some, corporate shark with a lot of limelight from major media or TV or anything like that. You could really just start building your own brand through social media. So, early days, I'm not sure if you were like me, but the first times I started sharing on social media, like every time I'd open the camera, my heart would race, or every time I'd write a caption, I'd be like, what's this person going to think? And I'd have all these people in my head that I imagined watching my stuff or reading my things and commenting and, all that sort of stuff, which at the end of the day, nobody cares about your shit as much as you do anyway. I think we make a bigger deal about it in our heads than what it really is. And then through trial and a bit of repetition, I just realized that you can build like real trust with your audience at scale. If you have 30,000 followers on Instagram, I would say a good 15,000 of them feel this connection that you and I have just from watching you through social media. And I think like you can create a real commercial bond with that audience at scale, which has its advantages commercially.
We just held an event in Brisbane, our first ever, and the amount of people, and it was quite intimate, like we're talking 80 people, but I would say 80% of them came up and said, I've been following you, Marty, since 2017, right? Never met him. All had some form of personal connection with him and all wanted to talk about the things that they'd seen or connected with him on. Have you had much of that? Have you had many people that you've...
Hundreds, thousands, really? People in the street that...
Isn't it scary?
Yeah, it is until you get become a little bit accustomed to it, and then you have to be careful that you don't, the notoriety doesn't go to your head and that sort of thing. But you have that rapport, and then when you have a commercial interaction like an event like that or like a sales meeting, it's just a totally different scenario to what it would be if you were cold selling this event, or you were having
It's an
people show up.
icebreaker, isn't it?
But it's so much more than an icebreaker. You know, like an icebreaker is, oh, you're in real estate, I'm in real estate. You know, I know your daughter, your wife, I know Freddie, I know your entire family. I haven't met them before. Like that's a different level of connection that you can have with an audience at scale. And I think like the coolest part is that you can do it at scale, because you can only have so many intimate relationships, and you know, I'm not talking super intimate, but you can only have
A handful of friends.
but you can have thousands with social media.
You can have thousands and thousands of acquaintances that you are more than happy to be vulnerable with. So this is the key thing. Vulnerable doesn't mean weakness. Vulnerability means strength. And you can be successful or show people your rise to, you know, getting to the point where you want to be professionally. And doing that is vulnerable, because the reason why most people don't share it is, well, what if they don't get there? What if they fail? Well, guess what? Show that too. Show people the moments where you fall, because you have to try and bounce back. And a lot of people want to find the way to bounce back. Business isn't just like this. It's constantly like this. And over time, there's that steady incline.
You definitely don't. I mean, I've followed you since the start, and like you've definitely gone through patches.
Like an employer.
But you've gone through patches of like huge amounts of posting, huge amounts of rawness, to pulling back, to going through. Like I've seen that in you.
Deleting social media.
To deleting it. I imagine you're the same. I had a look through some of your socials as well, and I feel like you're actually relatively new. I'm talking a few years. I mean, most of us have been doing it since like the early 2010s, let's say. For you, it's quite new, and early on, you were kind of feeling out what was okay. I mean, I know one in particular that stood out to me is, and if you go to Oscar's Instagram, it's still there, is the story you did about the water cooler. And you probably know it's coming. But like that in itself is like, you're going, okay, what is acceptable to put out? You know, for those who don't know, it's a story about, you know, you got asked by a foreman on a site, can we get some water for the lads? It's a huge commercial development down in a basement level. You said, sure, I'll look into it. In the time that you took to look into it, obviously there was some boxes you had to tick or things you had to do. This foreman decided you weren't doing it and went on a bit of a rant online. And you put all this out there, including dismissing him from the site. So what was the feedback from that? What did you learn from that? Did you go, right, this is how I want to do it moving forward? Or what was that?
That was probably just one of those vulnerable, raw moments that Marty's talking about. That foreman, he was a concrete foreman, and I had worked beneath him, 12, 15 years ago when I was concreting. So there was a lot more emotion in that post than there was, calculated, this is going to get good reach or anything like that. It was just something that it really upset me how the whole situation played out initially with this person. And it was just a moment of like, I had shared previously different circumstances of my life, and that foreman used those circumstances to dismiss the credibility of what I was doing online. And if you recall, when he shared his opinion online, yes, he said, this guy can afford to buy $50,000 watches and buy his dad a super yacht, but he can't afford to put water on site. And I felt like I had shared something on social media that, in the moment of sharing it, I was sharing it with good intention, and he had taken that and misused that. And that was sort of like, it was a moment for me where I was like, do I pull back because he's done this, or do I lean in even further and say, this is how I've been exposed and I'm going to share the entire part of it? And I just decided, like, in that moment, it was either pull back or lean in. I was like, fuck it, I'll lean in and see what happens. And the feedback was...
Because you can get caught in the middle, because you can get people going, yeah, but, and they're going to try and, take his side or what, and then you're stuck.
Yeah.
Because you're exposing yourself massively, right?
Yeah.
You're effectively saying, this is this guy's opinion, either believe it or don't, you know what I mean? Because there's two sides to every story, but you're giving that rawness, and now you're allowing your audience to be part of your kind of journey moving forward, and they're expecting openness from you. If you're going to do posts like that, everything has to be like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I did get that feedback. I did have people saying like, mate, it's 40 degrees. How come you don't have refrigerated water on site? And for me, all I can do is put my hand up and say it was an oversight. Back when I was on the tools, which was, 10, 15 years ago, you'd take your water cooler to work. And you'd sit on your lunchbox and you wouldn't have shade. And that, I don't agree that it should be like that, but that's how it was when I was coming up. And we've moved with the times as best as I think we could have, but this was just an oversight. And I was like, yeah, it was an oversight, but should I have been crucified for it? Maybe, maybe not. But either way, I was going to share the entirety of it.
Got many regrets on stuff that you've put out there? You look at anything and go, oh, I probably shouldn't have? Because I would say, in looking at your stuff, and you've pulled back more so in the last few years, I would say, of the open, raw, really opinionated stuff. I would say you're more opinionated to a degree, which is credit to you. You're happy to stand by your opinions on things.
I copped a lot of shit for the amount that I put out, which was just total rawness, talking about situations. I never felt that I was offending anyone, but it was in my delivery of how open it was that I was really copying that backlash. But also, there was so much that people were celebrating. It was really just, it's like the negativity really just outweighs the positivity.
But you cannot choose how someone takes what you say. Right?
Can't.
Look at Tim Gurner, look at the smashed avocado, look at the recent one, the comments he made. I would imagine there was both positive and negative feedback when you start saying, I don't see the reason we negatively gear, or the things that you've put out there, you stand by, good on you. But I imagine not everyone's like, yay.
Absolutely. And I think if you say anything polarizing with passion, you're going to attract people that passionately going to just disagree with you. I think,
but I love that. I love people that have an opinion on something as long as they're backing it up with why they think that.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. Like everyone should have an opinion. That's why there's politics. You got one side, it's something that social media is great because you don't have to vet it. You don't have red tape. You don't have, a board of directors that you need to show it to. You just put it out there because it is you. And if you're building that personal brand and you really believe in what you're thinking and saying, why not? For me, it's categorically been far more positive than negative, but you need to get to that point where the negative has to be there. So you need to expect that those comments and those thoughts will come through from people. You just don't necessarily have to respond all the time.
I know, but also probably toe the line with things like politics and, let's stay away from race and gender and all that sort of stuff.
I definitely stay away from
You're
all
doing
that.
more stuff.
I have dipped the toe in that area.
Yeah, I haven't.
Absolutely.
I absolutely
It's
haven't.
not See, people get offended. That's the other things you can't pick how someone takes it. Ricky Gervais famously says, like, just because someone's offended doesn't mean it's offensive. But it depends what sort of areas you want to get into to and fro, because you can get cancelled very easily.
You can, absolutely.
You can walk into a meeting, right, with a developer who goes, I saw what you said about thinking I don't want to work with you. It can happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you probably have to be a little
But like
careful.
what you said about how I pulled back, the pulling back is really only because of the responsibility now of the people that are at WhiteFox. So, when I was extremely vocal online, particularly through COVID, and in the lead up to launching WhiteFox and everything that we did, there may have been at any given time on average for those first few years, maybe 10 staff.
Yes.
So it was one of those things where it was so close knit that you could really control the narrative. Whereas now at, close to 100, I have this responsibility where if I say the wrong thing,
we're all cancelled.
we get cancelled, we're all gone. So I think it's something that, I miss being that direct. And it's probably something that you're loving, because what I love about your business is it's a very small team. I can't wait to talk more about the business, but when you've got that responsibility of 100 odd people that are honestly on the books as employees, it adds this other layer, and it's this like internal pause button, where that pause button may have been further down the remote and hard to find. Whereas now my pause button's really close up to me next to that play button. And I just can read the play on when I need to just shut the fuck up.
And you've got 100 odd people who also have differing opinions, and you're gonna end up that potentially.
We're a diverse market. We're a diverse business. There's a lot of different people that think differently, different ages, different upbringings, everything.
So for you, is there much you look back on and go, "Oh, wish I hadn't done that," or you comfortable? You really happy?
No, I'm pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
I think I shared something a couple of weeks ago about more specific business move that I made, rather than...
Was this the $327,000 one?
No, it was
because I want to talk about that.
It was. I entered into a contract to buy a site for $11 million, subject to due diligence.
Oh yes.
Sorry,
12.8.
12. Yes, and then I was under contract for 12.8. Realized that it made sense at 12.8, but there was no one else there to buy it, so I exited the contract as I could to then renegotiate to buy it for $11 million. And upon exiting the contract, the developer, much more astute and senior than I was, he was like, exit, I'm not giving you the deposit back. And it became a whole shit fight. His office was actually just down the road here. And I remember he said he was going to bankrupt me. He was going to sue me personally just so I could never trade. I couldn't trade for another 7 years.
Okay, so just to explain this, you bought the site for 12.8. What was the deposit that you paid? That was sitting in the other agent's trust account.
It was $500,000.
$500,000. So you put $500,000 down. You've then realised that, you know what, there is no other buyer there. I'm going to retract, which would normally mean that there would be some sort of fee associated with that unless you said that it didn't get through due diligence?
So there's a due diligence clause that said at my complete discretion, up to 45, I think it was 45 days from signing the contract, I could exit, have my deposit back.
Yeah.
But he just said, no, I'm not giving you deposit back.
Okay, so then he's in breach of the contract.
Well, he said you didn't exit the due diligence clause, right? And then that it was going to be a legal battle, and I wasn't going to pursue. I didn't have the money to pursue him.
Because normally, what would happen, just for the people listening, if you were in breach and he was to sell it for less than 12.8, he would then be able to sue you for the difference in that lower sale price. Yeah. So for him, he's thinking, "Hey, I should be picking up this difference."
Yeah.
What ended up happening?
So what I realised was there was no other buyer, and he was that desperate to keep me on the hook. That only sort of encouraged me that there was no other buyer. Because if he had another buyer there at 12.8, there was no way he was going to pursue me. I had no assets in my personal name. He knew that. But the way it unfolded was we ended up renegotiating, and I bought the site for 11 million. So, he took a considerable haircut, him and his partner, on the site. And
what was the timeline between the shit show kicking off and
60 days?
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there a handshake at the end, or was there a bit of like through gritted teeth for this guy?
No handshake, I'd imagine.
No, this is
$1.8 million. Yeah, there was no handshake. It got nasty in the midst there, and I remember telling my lawyer, I said, write to him and tell him if he's going to sue me personally, let me know, because before he does it, I'm going to head down to Zagami's. I'm going to lease a new Ferrari that I've always wanted. I'm going to park it through the front window of his Toorak Road office, because he had an office just down the road here. And I was 25 years old, so I was pretty upset about the whole thing.
So when did this all happen?
This was 2000. So we signed the new contract for 11 million on my 25th birthday, just by coincidence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those that are listening that have no idea,
we've just gone
straight into it. So talk us through, over a very short synopsis.
Yeah.
Oscar Ledlin, give us the quick rundown.
So I did a business degree while working part-time for my dad, who had a concreting business. Finished my degree, and I was working both on the tools and sort of in the office, helping doing the books and stuff like that for my dad's concreting business. And he said, listen, mate, if you want, my business is yours for the taking sometime over the next 10 years. I'll start, bringing you in more and more. And I said, Dad, appreciate the opportunity, but I'm getting as far away from the concrete as I can. I'm getting into property development. And I scoped a little duplex site around the corner and went to the bank and said, hey guys, I've saved 40 grand while working, part-time for my dad. I was professionally boxing, getting paid cash, and was working at garden supplies. I'm ready to buy this site. And they said, fantastic, you've got a deposit, but you can't show serviceability. So went back. I'm like, what am I going to do? I registered Ledlin Developments Proprietary Limited. Went back to the bank the next day and said, hey, can I speak to the business manager now? Because I'm a businessman. I've got a company. My company wants to borrow money.
How old are you?
I was maybe 21. And they said, mate, you've got a 2-day-old company with no trading history. You can't borrow money in this company. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Yeah. I said, well, can you give me some advice? What can I do? And they said, you need a guarantor. You've got a deposit. You can buy the site. You need a guarantor. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I went back to my dad and I said, Dad, here's my business proposal. I'm going to develop this site. I just need you to go guarantor. You can show serviceability because you've got some income. He said, listen, I'm happy to partner with you in your first project, but let's do something commercial because my concreting business can pour the concrete. It's a bit of work for my business. We can do it cheaper, et cetera, et cetera.
So you first wanted to try to do a residential duplex.
Yep.
And then he said no, based on how this business is operating, to leverage it the best that you can, let's go commercial.
Yep.
So you actually would have gone down that resi path.
Absolutely.
Had of you been able to get access to funds.
Exactly.
So it's your dad that's then said, let's go this way.
Yeah.
Which is a very different story as well, isn't it? Because your success, correct me if I'm wrong, has been, the commercial success has been enormous.
I mean,
I'm not saying you wouldn't have been in resi, but it's a different world.
I would have been up here with resi.
You're
okay,
it.
So you then turned into commercial. What went from there?
So I located another site. It was an $800,000 site, and I had 40 grand. So we agreed to buy the site on a 5% deposit. The site,
which is rare in commercial.
It is. But the site had been sitting dormant for years and years. The guy I bought it off, he had terminal cancer. The guy before him had gone broke on the site and the bank had taken it back. So the vendor I was dealing with had bought it off the bank. And I said, I want to develop this site, but I need 6 months to work out if I can develop it or not. Didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And he had sort of nothing to lose. So he said, yeah, go for your life. And there was an issue with the site where the stormwater and the sewer drain out the front, the levels didn't line up enough to get fall out from the site. So the site couldn't be serviced. So it was essentially farmland, couldn't be developed. And when I met with a civil engineer, he said, listen, you're the fourth client to come in and sit down with me with this site. It can't be developed. The levels are wrong. And I said, well, how wrong are the levels? And he said, doesn't matter, they're wrong. So I said, just for point of the exercise, I'm going to, get my head around how this drainage should work. So I went and shot the levels of the drains out the front of the block. And because of my concreting background, we had lasers. I set a truck up, shot the levels, marked them all down. And I was marking them against the levels that he had given me on record, and they weren't lining up. Double checked everything. I'm like, nah, these levels are wrong. Went back to the civil engineer and said, hey, this level and this level are wrong. And he looked at it, and I remember he was sitting there and he almost read me my rights, because to lift a Melbourne water pit lid and strip the levels is apparently illegal. So he said, you can't do this, but if you're going to do this, get these ones. So he did all that, came back. And what had happened was somewhere along the lines, either someone had written down 42.96 instead of 42.69, or the drains had been reinstated and replaced and the records hadn't been updated. One of those two things could have happened. And what had sent the two guys before me broke on this site was essentially just an administration error. Wow. So the site could be developed. We got development approval within the settlement timeframe. Bank West, it was back then, allowed us to settle on the site with a reval. So the land was valued at 2.4 million.
What did you pay for it?
800 grand.
Oh,
and with my
God.
5% deposit, I was able to leverage the equity of the $2.4 million val to help settle
some
on
more.
Settle. And then you would have had leftover funds.
So then could redraw those funds. We did a subdivision, subdivided it into 6 lots, then built 5 warehouses on the first lot, settled that, got some funds back in, did another 5, did that 2 more times, then we did 10. Then we bought another site, did 19, then 21, 28, 30. 71, 147, and just slowly
snowball.
And it's so good because it's like my story with flipping resi properties. I've always capitalised on other people's errors. And knowing this story now, I've always seen so many similarities between you and I with how we speak, what we put out there, the things that we like.
Coffee orders.
I mean, your coffee order's horrible.
I
won't even say what it is.
Yeah.
But it's about being an opportunist and understanding when there's an opportunity and there's a gap there. You can't just rely on what other people are saying. And how you said that you wanted to go and get the levels and see for yourself, that's because somewhere along the line you were maybe taught as a child to ask why, or to not trust everything that someone says, because you need to find out for yourself. I was brought up like that, and I see that similarity in you. And that's what unlocks these moments. And they're life-changing moments. Tiny little decisions in business can change the entire course of everything. And sometimes it's those really shitty moments where you can't get what you think you want, such as the funding, that then changes into a positive. And I think you've got that real positive mindset where if it's a no, you'll either find a way to get a yes, or it'll change your direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of been instilled through trial, error, repetition, and then ultimately reward from having that mindset to now, like you say, an engineer says, oh, no, sorry, you can't do that. And I say, we can. You just need to tell me another way to do it, or I'll find another engineer. Or, with the alcohol business, we're going to put electrolytes in this vodka premix. We had 10,000 people tell us you can't do it. If you could do it, it would have been done. This person, that person. Then all of a sudden, we're selling $1 million a month worth of vodka with electrolytes in it, and everything's fine. It's just, it's a narrative now, I think more often than it ever has been before, where it's too easy for people to say no. Everybody's busy, everybody's distracted. It's so easy to find a no and then move on to something else.
So for those of you that don't know you, and we've just been talking about property, and then you've just...
Yeah, I know. I knew you were going to say that.
So you've then developed since 21. How old are you now?
Today?
Yes.
32.
So then 21, how long were you just balls to the wall, focused on getting to where you wanted to be, which, by the way, I'd love for you to share where that is. How long was it just property?
It was just property until I was about 28.
Great.
It was
so
no
for the
holidays.
Last 4 years, you've unlocked this new version of what your life can entail.
Yes.
And from 4 years ago, what was that breakaway moment? Was it your surroundings, your network? Was it the fact that you had available funds? Was it the fact that you were more progressed as a business person. Where was that change 4 years ago? Was it
Probably
because you
also
met the right person?
You're older, you're more mature. There's lots to it. Right?
I think
what-
it was
what is
it was all of those things, and it was just an acceptance of like, you know, you've been going hard because, you know, 21 was when I decided, you know, I want to go into property. But for the 3 or 4 years before that, it was working 40, 50 hours a
You're
week
eating
while
shit.
doing a business degree and fighting professionally as well. So it was like, it was hard going for a long time. And it was finally that moment where it was like, you know, enough isn't enough, but it's time you can stop working 70, 80, 90 hours a week and start enjoying and start focusing on your health and that sort of thing. And COVID might have been, I think the back of COVID was a bit of a turning point for me because COVID hit and I seen a lot of people sort of resting on like, oh, well, if I fail, it's okay because everyone's failing. We're all in this together and that sort of stuff. I just doubled down during COVID and went
Same.
harder than ever. And then it was sort of off the back of that. I was like, well, maybe it's time to sort of stop and smell the roses a little bit. And,
COVID was an opportunity where if you were a worker and you had grit and you had self-belief, you actually took on the challenge and you looked at, all right, how can I now separate myself even further from the crowd?
In a way, COVID changed WHITEFOX for you. It changed.
Astronomically.
Like, I don't think it would be
Yeah.
in the same position right now.
Mentally, it changed because I doubled down and turbocharged. Physically, it fucked me.
Yes, but I mean, like Lana and Mike, they accelerated their development.
Absolutely.
Business went to a new place. So yeah, it's good to see that with you.
So 28, what was the first foray then for Oscar out of property? Where did the mind take you? And at 28, financially, you were at a position where you could step back and invest elsewhere.
I didn't take that step at the time. I think that was just a turning point for me where it was like, I took a holiday and I started.
Where'd you go?
I went to
Bali.
Vegas.
Don't say
fucking
Bali.
way.
If everyone
Nah,
listening,
nah.
he hates Bali, as do I.
Bullshit came in before we
You'll upset a lot of people talking shit about Bali.
Yeah. Particularly the West Australians.
Yeah.
Love going there.
Yeah. No, I went to Vegas with the boys. Did LA, Vegas, San Fran. So did 10 days road trip. It was like leaving my business for nearly 2 weeks or something I just never done before.
And which boys, is this the Rat Pack that we were talking about?
It was half of the Rat Pack. Yeah.
Which we'll get to the Rat Pack.
Exactly right.
We're gonna touch on the Rat Pack.
And then the following year went to Hawaii with Jesse, and then it just become like I just started experiencing life a little bit more. I bought a car, just started. I didn't go crazy, but just started enjoying myself a little bit. And then it wasn't until it was actually my 30th birthday when decided that I was going to segue into another business opportunity. And I'd considered 100 along the way. Once you start having a little bit of success, and especially with social media, you get approached by people, hey, you want to invest in this or you want to partner in that. And I'd looked at 100 other things and it was always like, it's not the time until, when I was 30, I was like, I think I have the capacity to juggle a couple of things, wear a few different hats and get a little bit more experience. And that was when G-Up was born.
G-Up. Have you had one?
Haven't tried a G-Up.
I'm
Didn't bring a
surprised you
case
didn't
for us.
bring
Yeah,
any.
I was going to, and then I was like, nah, it's
We
10
could have had
a.m.
one.
It's 10 a.m.
Because
I'll Uber some.
This is my last meeting before my first holiday in 8 years to Europe, taking the whole family, taking 9 family members. So I would have loved
little
to
G-Up.
start
Man,
today,
I've
10
missed an
a.m.
opportunity
with
here.
a G-Up.
Yeah.
So let's go to the Rat
Is there a liquor land on Tour?
Yeah.
There's one just across the road,
yeah.
isn't there? I'll run over after.
Okay, I'll go get some.
We'll find a G-Up. Okay, so again, and so we explained to the audience, I'm sure a lot know, particularly Adrian Patelli.
And Troy Candy.
But I'm saying, particularly Adrian Patelli, LMCT, huge company. You've had dealings with him on the block. We've seen him buy the block houses. He's out there. He's proud. He's done incredible things, mate of yours. And then Troy Candy as well, who people may know from his raps and whatnot. I actually looked at his Wikipedia. It says, it's funny, it says he invented the snorkel, in brackets, the drinking one. You got to dinner party like, I invented the snorkel, the drinking one.
Yeah, so good. Picture people just snorkeling around the Great Barrier Reef.
You invented the snorkel?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell us about the genesis of those friendships, because I feel like, I don't know the background for you, and maybe you've known them many years, but you're all so successful in your own way. You're different personalities. You've had different businesses along the way. Something's brought you together.
And all proud fathers now.
All proud fathers.
Exactly right, the dad's group. So I met Troy, I should really know this date, about 8 years ago. Troy is my wife Jessie's brother, and that's how we met. We met in the hallway of his mum's house.
So you were with Jesse back then?
Yes. So
How long have you been with Jesse for?
I should know, but about 7 or 8 years.
Yeah,
it's called 10 or 8, yeah.
So yeah, we met in the hallway of his mum's house, and we were just chatting, and I remember I told him that I was going to buy a car, like my dream car, and
What was the dream car?
It was a GDR, a Nissan GDR.
The purple one?
Yes, yeah.
And he wanted to wrap it for you, did he?
No, he believed me, and like I must have been 23 or 24 years old, and I had nothing. I had a little concreters ute parked out the front. I was dating his sister, and he was like, "Oh yeah." And then a couple of months later, he's like, "Oh, there's a cheap GDR in Sydney. You should go look at it." And I was like, this guy believed what I had said. I could have told 100 people that I was going to buy a GDR, and they were like, no, you're not. So we just sort of bonded over that, and we become very close friends. And Troy's just always brought different people together, and we joke about it because he's always been a busy guy, and we all are now, but he would make social commitments with 2 different friends. He'd double book himself. So rather than be like, sorry, mate, I can't make it, he would just bring 2 friends together, and he would do that constantly. And then we ended up just forming this friendship circle that has now become...
So he was friends with Adrian, and that's...
So he became friends with Adrian through doing business together. So they were both sort of in that trade promotion giveaway sector, and then they partnered up, and then I met Adrian through Troy, and the friendship developed, and then I met Nick and Panna both through Troy as well, and we all sort of just become what nobody calls the infamous 5, but it sounds all right, doesn't it?
It literally is the Rat Pack. I love it.
It's fun to watch you. Yeah, it's fun to watch your travails online, what you guys get up to. It must be a fun crew. I mean, because you're living a life that a lot of people dream about. Let's be honest. You know, to be successful.
But so say how you just said that, but do they dream of the stress?
No,
do they dream of the leverage?
No,
do they dream of...
I don't need the reality. I'm saying people look at it and go, I love that. I'd love to have a watch. I'd love to be able to drive a car. I'd love to go on a holiday.
Yeah. But do they want to put their balls on the line to risk it all for that?
Well,
that's the question.
The ultimate example is basically your career lived and died on 30 centimetres or 0.5 of a centimetre, whatever it was. Like your drive to change that and get that first development off the ground is really the success story that drove you to. And then, of course, 8 years of hard work before you've even got to that point.
And there were plenty of rolls of the dice along the way too. You know, like I would love to say that one moment, you know, is why I get to live in the house on Beach Road and drive. But there was moments along the way where I was like, I think I've made the wrong decision here, or I've gone, you know, I'm erring a bit close to the wall, or whatever it might be.
What's the one? Is there one that sticks out? It could have gone another way. Is there a moment where?
Yeah, our Springvale Business Park project, which is our largest project to date, 147 tenancies.
Flexi.
Yes, including Flexi, $80 million in revenue.
Explain to people what Flexi.
Flexi is a strata storage unit, so 4 walls and a roller door with communal co-working office space, boardroom, car wash, lounge area.
It's technically like an office co-working. But
cross between a Storage King or a Fort Knox and a WeWork.
And are you the first person to do that in Victoria, if not Australia?
We're the first person to bring communal amenity into the strata storage space anywhere that we know of. So
it's incredible.
So very, very...
are there copycats coming out
absolutely, now? Absolutely, yeah. No one's doing it as well, but no, they are. They're plenty.
To be expected.
And to give that a succinct sort of one-liner, what do you call that? What's your niche, the product that you create in that space? What would you call that? If you haven't coined it yet?
No, I haven't. I mean, first step out of the garage is how we position it to our consumer. So for small businesses that are getting set up, you know, they're working from their living room and they've got their garage full of their e-com product or whatever it is, that's the target market.
Budding entrepreneurs that need space for product, need space to get away from home because, again, working from home and doing that full time, it's bad for your mental health. A lot of people break. So you're giving these people a low entry point, but you're giving them still the luxury things that would make them feel like they're part of a much bigger investment.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and to be around like-minded individuals. And then coming back to you know your point with you know Adrian has had the most commercial success out of the group, and like the guy's still going hard. You know, like he'll be filming lives at 8-9 p.m. at night, and he's traveling. He's got a young boy, and he's traveling all around Australia still to do business. And now he's flying on a private jet with his 10-week-old baby with him. But he's still going hard. And the guy's family for the next 10 generations wouldn't have to work, but he still has that drive of where he wants, whether it's more or to do better or to do different or to progress. And I think that's sort of like what holds, you know, what separates the people from watching the story and being like, we want to drive around with the boys in the Rolls Royce pumping tunes on a Friday afternoon to, do you want to make the sacrifices and take the risks to get there?
But this and also, you're all, sorry to interrupt you, but you're in these positions because you're willing to challenge the status quo. You're willing to think of, well, why has it been done like this? Why can't it be looked like that? And that's where it's unlocking this potential. It's having that self-belief. Like, you've all got incredible self-belief. Even when, for instance, your brother-in-law, Troy Candy, is plastered all over the news and he's got cops banging down his door and he's got people saying that he's dealing drugs and all this stupid shit. It's like, to still have the self-belief even when the spotlight is so heavily on your forehead, that's the part that's the most admirable, because that's where most people break, even if they had 1% of that type of heat. So when you've got this rat pack that has so much self-belief and supports each other, it's really hard to fail. It's like your second family. It's like, if you've got the right mum or dad or partner, but if you've got the trifecta and you've got all of that support around you and your goals that you want to achieve, that's, I think, the secret.
But surely the lesson in this as well is you are, of all those people we've mentioned, when I say precarious, you're in a position where development is challenging. Look at how many businesses have gone under in the last couple of years who are big name developers. So you're still in that position of, like, if you're just stuck in development, there's risk associated.
It's bricks and mortar. It's not online.
We didn't even get to the bottom of what the thing was with Springvale about why it was in the balance. You tell us about that.
Yeah, so Springvale, biggest roll of the dice at the time. We'd gone from doing 5 mil, 10 mil, 15 mil gross realisable value projects to an $80 million project. The capital required to buy what should have been 12.8 but ended up $11 million acquisition. It was putting all our eggs in one basket, and we did it leading up to the 2019 federal election, where, if you remember, they were going to abolish negative gearing, and the entire property market stopped for about 9 to 12 months. And I remember just being like, we can't rest. Like, we couldn't give small warehouses away in that project at the start of the campaign. Like, we were doing everything. We tried selling them locally, we tried selling them internationally, we tried selling them virtually, we just couldn't sell them. We just couldn't get rid of them.
And was this your lead sales guy, Tim?
No, this was before Tim. This was before Tim. Yeah, so that was probably the problem. That might have been the problem. We didn't have Tim, but the market was it was dire, and we weren't in a position where we could say, listen, let's park this project for 18 months.
What were you trying to sell these things for?
In terms of price, we sold the first one for $270K.
270. What would they be worth today? $750.
Okay. Yeah.
Good return.
Yeah. And that was off the plan, so yeah, maybe even a little bit more. But if we couldn't get the pre-sales required to start that project, that would have destroyed my business. I just didn't have the ability to hold that land while we waited for the market to recover. So we eventually got some runs on the board. Liberal won the federal election. We did deals the following week. The market started shifting, and we're able to get the project underway and ultimately turn it into what has been our biggest success so far. But there was a moment there where I was like, I don't think we're coming out of this.
So do you look, when you see, and I know a lot of developers that have gone under recently have been more resi, but do you look at those and go, every one that happens, are you looking at and going, what can we learn out of that? How can we protect ourselves from future projects? Because you're still going.
Yeah.
So what have you done as a business to make sure to future-proof yourself?
I was chatting to a mentor of mine, a few years after Springvale sort of got going, and I was saying, like, I was a bit nervous there, and he said that you have a few rolls of the dice along the way, and this mentor is hugely successful. He's worth a couple $100 million, but not a Forbes couple $100 million, an actual couple $100 million. And he said, to really elevate your position, you have to have a few rolls of the dice throughout. But he's like, if you keep rolling the dice, at some point your number's going to come up and you're going to lose the farm. So he's like, it's about getting to a position where you think you've leveled up a few times and you can have a more consistent and considered approach moving forward. And off the back of Springvale, that's sort of been my approach now of, and I think maybe that's where G-Up comes into it a little bit as well. It's a place to sort of bury some of my enthusiasm where I'm not going to get caught out like I will if we did 5, and then we did 10, and then we did 20, and then, 30, 50, 70, 147. To roll the dice again and say, I want to build a shopping centre and hold it, it would be, I'd be subject to economic times and like opening myself up to a whole lot more risk to take a big leap and to, striving for that massive success. But I've sort of got to a position where I'm like, I want the success, but I want a little bit more of a considered way to get there.
Yeah, not at the expense of possibly losing it all.
Exactly.
And I love what you said about you needed like another outlet. And that's what I had for many years with WHITEFOX Marketing when we launched a marketing business in 2019 with Aidan Hathaway, because I wanted to do all these, crazy things and keep thinking and pushing, but not at the expense of deteriorating what we have with WHITEFOX Real Estate. So by having this other agency helping other brands, it was a way for me to have that creative release until it got to a point where it was probably taking too much time away from the core business, which was WHITEFOX Real Estate.
Yeah.
So with G-Up and being able to sink your teeth into that with your mates, how's that evolved? And obviously great to diversify your portfolio, but how's that all come about? And talk us through what differentiates it in the marketplace.
Yeah, so the business came about. It was something that Troy looked at doing himself, and he had tried for about 18 months, and he was struggling with the licensing, and it was just he was trying to juggle too many things at once. And he sat with the boys, and we're having a drink. It was a couple of years before we eventually launched, and he said, I'm sort of giving that away. Like I got some samples and I did some branding, but I've got too many things going on. I can't get across this hurdle. And we said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. We'll get involved.
What was the hurdle? The liquor license?
The liquor license was the biggest hurdle. Yes. Yep.
Because how did you get a liquor license?
I got the liquor license. So reputable character that Troy didn't have, essentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because, sorry, what year is this around?
This is probably around 2022. Yeah.
Because in the last, I would argue, in the last few years, the RTD space has become very busy.
Yes.
You've got like Solo doing hard Solo. Yeah. You've got fizzers and like seltzers. Like you're coming into a time when the choice has never been more in that space.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the only expanding category in alcohol, because people are drinking less and less, which I'm a massive advocate for. Yes. But the RTD space is growing. So
they want to drink less, but drink nicer drinks.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So anyway, Troy was like, I'm throwing in the towel. The boys were like, we can't let you do that. We'll help you. And he said, oh, well, if you're going to give me a hand, we'll make it a business. And that was the foundation of the partnership. And then it was, hey, how are we going to have a point of difference? What are we going to do? And we'll have less sugar. We'll do electrolytes. And then we met with, everyone told us we couldn't do it. We met with a biochemist out in Nevada. We want to formulate a drink that, helps the recovery process better. These are the electrolytes we're thinking of doing. He helped us create a blend. And then we built, the business, and we're doing $1 million months now. It's,
And where do you see that going? I mean, is that, you hear so many amazing alcohol stories where the big boys just buy you out and you get $1 billion.
The Mick Fanning Bolton beer story.
Well, what did Mick Fanning get?
Tens of millions.
So what
they sell bottles for?
400, yeah.
You got 400.
I think
he got 400?
I think that the business was sold as 400. I think maybe he got 80 or something like that.
And what do you think the potential is with G-Up?
I think it's substantial. Yeah. I mean, that's not my intention with the business was to have a creative outlet, to do something with the boys, and then just to have more business experience. So it's new partners. It's a totally different industry. There's a lot of similarities between property and booze, believe it or not. But it was just something where I'm like, this is going to be a lot of fun. So it was essentially going to start as a Shopify platform. We'll just sell them online and see what happens. And then it started snowballing. And then I was like, guys, we need an operational partner because nobody wants to be packing boxes and sending anything out. So then we partnered with an existing alcohol business.
And who was that?
That's 80 Proof Australia. So they have...
And what do they do? Do they take a percentage of your sales, or do they come on as a partner?
Both. So we have an operational agreement with them. So it's like a service-based agreement where they have a fulfillment list of KPIs, and they have to organise logistics and that sort of thing, and we pay them a fee for that, and then they also have a minority equity holding within the business as well.
Do they have to buy that holding, or is it just a share?
Yeah, they do. They bought that holding.
A share sale or issuing?
Issuing.
Yeah. So it's not a mini exit because the money goes back into the company.
Is there are there other things on your mind? Like in terms, you've got the business, you've got the alcohol, you've got the building. If you go, I'd love to one day Is that what's on your mind? I feel like you're the sort of dude who already do you want to own a boxing promotions company or like
Absolutely not.
I can see Australia's next Don King.
God, that would be good.
Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah.
We had a few boxers on, by the way.
Charity fight.
Yeah.
Oscar Ledlin.
Yeah. I like fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have a few things on my mind, but at the moment, my hands are full.
Keep them here?
Yeah. I think
What industries excite you outside of liquor and property?
all of them. All of them.
Fireworks, photography.
all of them. Honestly, all of them. But I just love business.
Yeah.
But I think influencer-backed brands is still very untouched. I don't think, we've seen it with like KSI and Logan Paul with Prime and like Kylie Jenner and, The Rock and all these massively influential people who are growing like and Mr. Beast, of course, billion dollar business, like multi-billion dollar businesses in a matter of 12 months, 2 years, and that can't be done without the influential backing. And then we've seen that with G Up. We launched G Up in February 2023, and we did our first $1 million month like 4 months in or something like that. And you just can't. I don't think you can do that with any amount of distribution partners or marketing spend. It needs that.
So has that broken records for the liquor industry with what you've done there? Is that something that the industries? I mean, I'd assume that there's like industry awards or industry recognition or sales milestones that these big companies look at and they go, "Whoa, this is quite unique." Has G Up done that?
I mean, I'm not sure of any awards. Like I know all the property ones, the booze ones. I'm not familiar with. We definitely copped the most attention out of any brand to launch it that I've ever seen, and we had we were copying a lot of flack from giants in the industry. We were getting reported to Liquor Control Victoria, to ABAC, which is the responsible marketing campaign, for just bullshit stuff that made no sense. And they'd be like, "Oh, there's been a complaint lodged against G Up from a worried concitizen of the public," and then it'll be like, "The worried concitizen has made this complaint according to subsection paragraph B42 of the Liquor Control Act." I'm like, that's not a Karen. That's that's the legal department of Asahi. He's trying to push us under the rug, sort of thing. So there's been a lot of that, but no, we haven't been recognised for any awards.
Where are you advertising? Are you doing TV? Are you just doing influencer?
It's really like influencer marketing more than anything. Like UGC. So the brand promotes itself because we've built this community and vibe around the brand. People want to be seen drinking it, so then when somebody gets it, they promote it on social media, and it becomes this whole network of self-fulfilling.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, I take the lessons learned from say Big Vape with Juul, right? When you have a product that is cool, you got to be careful how you market it, because of course children can drink it. Like if there's photos online of 16-year-olds drinking G Up, it's actually bad for your brand.
Yeah, exactly right.
So you've got to be very careful in that regard, right? So how do you safeguard that?
I mean, I play dad when all the boys are out and the phones are out and all that sort of stuff. It's like, nah, take that down, because it's really anybody who has an influential role within the business, they are scrutinised by law.
And what's your role within the business?
I'm CEO, believe it or not.
You're the CEO of G Up.
Yeah, of Launch Liquor, which is the brand that owns G Up. Yeah. So with all that, like, we launched and Troy put a photo of himself and his 2-year-old son up, both wearing G Up t-shirts. And like, we nearly lost our liquor license over it because they said you're using a 2-year-old to promote an alcoholic product, which was not the intention of the post.
No.
But that's the way the laws work, and we made
So you got a warning for that?
Yeah, we've had a few.
Slap on the wrist.
Little slap on the wrist. Yeah, I'll take it.
But see, how cool is it that you're learning these things? It's marketing laws, it's liquor laws, it's property laws. Like, what you're doing is you're really training your brain to become such an encyclopedia of knowledge for the next entrepreneurs or your own children that are growing. And when they're coming to you for advice, or friends and other people that see you as that business figure within the Australian community, you've got so much value.
And you can immediately take it back. And I have, when I first started working with the boys and we were planning out how we're going to market this product, what our point of difference is, how we're going to leverage it, and to see them run through, this is going to be the social media strategy, I took that straight away and we launched our Vermont project and we sold $19.5 million of property in 6 minutes, which I think...
6 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, call your mate Gurner, because I reckon I've challenged him for... there's got to be an award for that. And that was all built off the strategy that Troy and Adrian wanted to use to leverage G Up, and I just rolled it back into what is now called our Ledlin VIP and did it with property sales. So you're right, that experience that I'm picking up and there's a network that I'm developing through Launch Liquor and G Up as well that can benefit everything, but it really it's just a lot of fun.
And what's it been like now building a family and building businesses? Are they as hard as each other?
I mean, it's very early days for me. Romeo's 13 weeks old, so I'm right in the thick of it, hence the bags under the eyes and the croaky voice.
Welcome,
Hey,
it
yeah.
doesn't go away.
You know what? No matter how much sleep or no sleep you have, the teeth still look good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a crazy experience. Like I wouldn't change it for the world, but it has been without a doubt the most challenging thing that I've done. Is I have hardly raised a child yet, but just being there to support Jessie through the last stage of pregnancy, the birth, and then the first few weeks have been like, what do I do with this little potato-looking thing?
Well, I remember you and I were messaging, 7 days in, and you were explaining the 7 days that you'd had, and you realise how your world can cave in, and everything else means nothing, and all you want is for your baby to be healthy.
But also, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you have a great relationship with your dad, is that correct?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you've had that relationship, you know that, he's nurtured you, he's part of your business journey, and you've now got this child that, whether he ends up going into the same world or not, now got this responsibility. Oh, he'll be on G-Up.
Starting in concrete.
Yeah, exactly right. He's got to learn the hard way.
He's got to learn the hard way, but this is now your responsibility. Like, it is your responsibility to bring this child up in a way that, he becomes a good person, he's successful and has every chance to do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah. And to your point, Marty, it changed every perspective I had almost overnight. The things that I would lay awake thinking about the week before Romeo was born were out of my mind and haven't returned to the same degree. It's like, oh, am I going to get sales across for this, or how's funding going to go for that? It's like I want to be home by 8 o'clock to see my kid, put him to bed and stuff. Like the priorities really change, and I still have, I think quite large ambitions of what I want to do in business, but the value of that ambition has just sort of diminished a little bit alongside, my family values is now they're emerging.
It's that pause button on your remote getting a little bit closer to hit.
Yeah, exactly
it's
right.
Literally what it is.
Yeah.
And you said, again, back to those ambitions, you've got these ambitions. What's, one or two that you can share with us so that we can cheer you from the sidelines continuously to achieve those things?
I think just to continue to progress, like I had a big goal from when I was 20 years old. I had this 30 by 30 goal that I wanted. I wanted a $30 million net worth by the time I was 30 years old. And that was sort of like my anchoring with regards to my ambition. That's what I was pushing towards. Now I'm 32. I haven't really set another big outstanding goal. I'm really just sort of trying to find my feet with having a family now that I'm committed to and that I really want to spend time with and have quality, input into curating. And then I'm running, 2 different businesses that I have individual ambitions within each, but I haven't got any overarching grand goal yet.
Which is quite nice, because I've said about this on my goal setting podcast with you, Shu, where it gets to that point where you find that stillness, you have an epiphany, you get out the pad and the pen on the phone, and you actually know what that next 5 odd years looks like. Because right now I think you're at the end of maybe something that you'd set 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. You've hit it, and you're going to have this epiphany moment probably within the next 6 months, where your next 8 years is so clear in your mind. It's just that it's so big that you're probably internally coming to terms with really what level that's going to be at, because it's going to be massive.
And is there somewhere you want to fight? Can we organise it? Can we organise a fight for you?
Mate, I've got a few people. Just how long have we got left? Or just line them up?
There's the developer at the road.
He's gone, mate.
I always worry when I see a boxer who's got such a pretty face, because I'm like, where's the broken nose? Where's the cauliflower?
No, too quick.
Good surgeon. Good surgeon.
Yeah.
Too
I
quick.
feel like we were remiss for the audience if we don't give the $327,000 in a day story, because I know you wanted to ask about it. Just to finish off.
No, so what was interesting is explain what happened with this $327,000 profit in a day, because once you explain the story, I want to explain something that happened within that story which resonated with me. So Explain what actually...
So there was a small development site come up for sale down on the peninsula, and this was when I was a few years into my development journey, and I was starting to have some success and a little bit of money, and I found this site and I thought, great. And I called to inquire on the site. They wanted $750,000. I offered $700,000 straight away. Went back and forth for a few weeks, but couldn't do a deal. 6 months later, the site was still for sale. I phoned up again. Hey, I'm still here at 700. The vendor wants 750, not moving. Another 6 months later, I would call up again. I go, all right, I'll pay 750. I want a long settlement. Yep, all right, done. Agreed to a deal, sign a heads of agreement. And the vendor, a lovely old lady, passed away between signing the heads of agreement and signing contract of sale. So we had done the deal at 750, but no one was available to sign the contract. She had passed. Her estate had to then go through, of course, as you know, probate. Probate can take some time until there's somebody who legally has the ability to sign a contract of sale to sell the asset. 6 months later, her family have finished the probate, and luckily for me, they make good on her agreement to sell the property to me for $750,000. The contract's prepared and $750,000 is there, and I'm about to sign it. And in that 18 months that I pursued this property, Ledlin had a burst of success, and this small development site on the peninsula was less attractive to what it was to me 18 months prior. But I felt I had sort of committed so far and already worked so long to get this deal to where it was. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead with the deal anyway. So signed the contract, paid my 10% deposit. The next day, it might have even been that afternoon, I get a call from this guy who's tracked down my number, and he said, hey, I know you bought this site. I want to buy it. And I said, you know what, I've got plans to build 6 showrooms. I really want to go ahead with this project, which I didn't.
You turned it up.
I did. I turned it up. I'm like, mate, I've been dreaming of doing this since I was a little fella, blah, blah, blah. It's close to home. If you want me to nominate you on the contract, you've got to give me my $75,000 deposit back, and I want $327,000 as a nomination fee. And he blew up, you know, because I probably sounded 15 on the phone, but I was 28 at the time, or 27 at the time. How can you rightfully make $327,000 in a day? You know.
So this all happened 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But you only shared this recently.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just easing into how much I share. Come on. And he blows up. So I say, mate, don't worry about it. 24 hours, he calls me back. He says, listen, yeah, I understand you're a businessman. My partners and I will pay you $50,000. I said, mate, it's $327,000. Don't call me unless you're going to pay me $327,000. And it was back and forth for a few days. And then on the 4th day, he calls me and he says, mate, my partners and I, we've got to give it to you. We've got a lot of respect. You knew what you wanted. You haven't budged from it for whatever reason. We're happy to pay you $320,000. And I remember I was in the car at the time on loudspeaker, and I just was holding my laughter in, and I just didn't say anything. And it felt like 2 minutes, but there was this, good 15 seconds of awkward silence. And he said, but we're not going to let the deal go over $7,000, so you can have your $327,000. And it took a couple of days.
If they hadn't said that, would you have gone 320 done?
Mate, I would have taken $100,000. I didn't want the site, but I just felt like I knew, I had a commodity that he wanted.
Yes.
And
it was a standoff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Why 327 out of curiosity?
It was just when he asked for a number, I just was going to say I want $300,000. I'm like, no, that just sounds like I've just made up $300,000. So I thought if I come up with a number that sounds particular enough to make him think there's a reason behind it, he will respect that.
For the non-property man, it's an art of negotiation. Yes. You always make it a bit quirky, and it seems very realistic.
Very good.
And it worked. So that was.
So then you've put this story up on social media a week or so ago, and there was part of your story where you said that you toyed internally for quite a while, asked a few people whether or not you should share this story, and you had a lot of older people in your circle say, don't do it for various reasons. What were those reasons that the older people advised against for you to share this?
Yeah, and I will share this. Don't cut it into a short because this older gentleman follows me on social media, but I don't imagine he'll listen to this podcast. But it was the previous story that I shared the week earlier about signing the contract for 12.8 and then renegotiating to 11 million. He had seen that on social media and he called me, and he's a real estate agent and he's on one of my listings, and he's an older guy, and he said, mate, why would you share that? And I just sort of, laughed it off, and he's like, that's commercially sensitive information. And I said, I didn't share anyone's name, or I didn't share the address of the property. Like, I don't believe it's commercially sensitive. It was 5 years ago. Like, relax. And he was very upset about it. I said, mate, just let's not worry about it. And so interestingly, he's been on a listing trying to sell a property for me for 5.5 months. And he called me to tell me about, how I shouldn't have shared this thing on social media. Yesterday, we sold the property that he's been trying to sell for 5.5 months from a lead that came through what he was dismissing we shouldn't have shared on social media. So his dismissal of what I claim is somewhat of a marketing play has been the demise of his business affairs within this property. So that was the way it went. They don't understand, and I think, I'm not sure why, but they have this somewhat of an insecurity of, he thought I was sharing trade secrets as well. I didn't hang around to feel out exactly what his hesitations were, but we just had to agree.
Because what's amazing is that I've shared certain things on social media where certain people in my circles, tend to be a little bit older, have said you shouldn't have done that. But the interaction, what people don't realise on Instagram stories particularly, that's the highest form of engagement for people like you and I. The hard posts, a little bit here and there. But it's the stories, that's where your community connect with you. You don't have their mobile numbers, you don't have their email addresses, and there's so many years and years and years and years and years of relationship building in the background that some of those posts actually breed some of your biggest opportunities. And that's why I loved that post, because you shared how you were given advice behind the scenes to just delete it. And I didn't even know that this brought on another sale. But you've got to put it out there in order to see what comes of it. If you do not put it out there, you've shut the door on opportunity. And you've got to keep opening it yourself. It's like people say, I'd love to meet people that can open doors for me. What are you talking about? Open your own fucking door. And that's what social media allows you to do. You give yourself the voice. Doesn't matter what school you went to, who your parents were, whether or not you were born with the silver spoon or not. All that shit goes out the window if you know how to use your hand and grab that door handle and open it up. And
if you have the courage to share, I think, like you said earlier, that's the biggest part of it. It's not about coming up with some story or, 2-bit piece of advice or anything like that. It's about having the balls to say, this is what I did, for better or worse, this is how it played out, and I've got the courage to, give you guys a transparent view into what happened. Judge me for all you like, because this is how it is. And I think you can definitely see in some influential characters in social media that the ones that are transparently and authentically showing up as themselves, they're having, some of them having massive success because of it.
Absolutely. I love it. I'm such a fan. I'm proud to, say that I'm an acquaintance that's slowly becoming a friend, hopefully.
Can't have too many.
I need a few G-ups.
No, you're unashamedly yourself. I think massive
best.
Respect to that. And if you're unafraid to put out things, both good and bad, and, learnings, it's interesting for people, it's interesting for people like myself who aren't property people to learn how you've done what you've done. And, I think kudos to you.
Thank you.
The success is in the, in the scarf.
Did he just say he's not a property person?
Look. He has a beautiful house that he's renovated. So you are a property person. You love property.
Not, as Marty
but
said,
you're not as risk adverse.
I haven't sold a property
stuff
like you guys. Okay. So let me just say that.
No.
But nothing but respect. And it's been a great chat. This is the thing. There's lots more we could go into, but we've got to get you going, be a father, and do what you got to do. So Oscar Ledlin, thank you for coming on with the Fox. Appreciate all the time that you've given us. You have to go on a holiday.
I know.
You can check out.
I'm very thankful that this is my last meeting.
But
it's been a great way
to the
end.
listeners out there, the next time we hear you may be with one of the most influential men in property in the world.
Absolutely. Daniel Daggers in the heart of London on the 20th of June. We'll be sitting down in his office, the star of Buying London, that's ranked in the top 10 in over 35 different countries for Netflix. We're going to be having a chat. He was ousted from Knight Frank famously for doing too much social media.
Wow.
And launched Daniel Daggers, and we became friends. He loved what I was doing here in Australia, and he's implemented a lot of the different things that WHITEFOX has been famous for in Australia, and he's added his own dynamic way of, representing property in the UK. And this time next week, I'll be sitting with him, and I'm just loving connecting with just people that are unapologetically themselves, and that authenticity is why they're achieving the success that they are. So there's clues in success, and people should honestly believe in themselves, and if they can, put themselves out there, be vulnerable, and keep punching.
And when you're thirsty, have a G up. Is that good?
Absolutely.
We need a tagline.
Responsibly with a snorkel. Because you got to keep breathing.
G up is not associated with a snorkel.
Thanks, Oscar. Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll see you on the next With the Fox podcast.
How good is that?